Once again this week, we start with the news. Funding is a bit slow again this week as we near Q3. We see further acquisitions taking advantage of the market dip. More asset and talent scoops than true business acquisitions, though. Concerns about the new .zip domains. The OWASP top 10 for large language models has been created. LLM AI attack surface mapping. Understanding the RSA iceberg. The FBI has cyber criminals paranoid. And Montana bans TikTok because somebody cooked chicken in NyQuil and filmed it. Then we've got 5 micro interviews to share that were broadcast live from RSA last month. For our second segment, we've got Jon Check, Executive Director of Cyber Protection Solutions at Raytheon Intelligence Space. We'll share the critical steps organizations must take to prepare for a security breach. Then Amitai Ratzon, CEO of Pentera, discusses automated validation of security controls. There's some tricky names in here. And finally, Thomas Kinsella, founder and chief customer officer at Tynes, talks leveraging no-code automation to keep up with threats. And for our third and final segment today, we've got 2 micro interviews to share. Deepika Chauhan, Chief Product Officer at DigiCert, discusses the importance of unified platforms and flexible deployment options to put digital trust at work. And then Bill Brenner discusses a variety of topics affecting security professionals today with Steve Ragan. All that and more on this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly.
Do the words free time or relaxation sound foreign to you? Perhaps you've been stuck in the office too long, battling cyber threats or worrying about the next strain of ransomware. Let Sophos help provide peace of mind 24/7, 365 with cybersecurity delivered as a service. Because we want you to get back to your weekends, family dinners, and everything in between. And you'll get there with Sophos. Visit securityweekly.com/Sophos to learn more. Welcome to Enterprise Security Weekly and happy Geek Pride Day. This is episode 319, recorded on Thursday, May 25th, 2023. I'm your host, Adrian Sanabria, and joining me is the Master of Marketing, the Mayor of Mayhem, fractional podcast co-host, Tyler Shields. How you doing, Tyler?
I am doing well. Fractional podcast co-host. I love that. That's pretty true.
All right. Also joining me is the Czar of Zero Trust, the Captain of Content, Katie Teitler. How you doing, Katie?
I'm well. Happy May 25th to you.
And finally joining us is the Baron of Bloodhound, the Pirate King of PowerShell, Sean Metcalf. How are you, Sean?
Doing well, thank you. Back from a visit to beautiful Springfield, Missouri over the weekend, so it's nice to be back home for a bit, especially going into a holiday weekend in the U.S. How are you, Adrian?
I'm good. Our B-Sides is done here. So it's a ton of weight off. We just did the wrap-up meeting at a nice local barbecue place called Sweet Peas here in downtown Knoxville. And it was nice. It was almost entirely positive stuff. Yeah, I think one talk got one bad review, and that's pretty much it.
And I just, on a personal note, I want to say congratulations to Ella for her advancement ceremony today, going from elementary school to middle school.
Woohoo! Oh, nice.
Nice.
Very cool. Congrats, Ella. All right, a quick announcement here, and then we'll get into the news. We didn't mention anything about being Geek Pride Day.
No, I'm proud to be a geek. I don't know about you, Adrian, but I'm totally proud to be a geek.
Yeah,
Always.
yeah. I mean, that's most of what we're doing on this show is geeking out. I know me and Tyler have been geeking out on AI quite a bit, and I'm sure Sean was geeking out at B-Side Springfield. But yeah, no, it's a privilege and a pleasure.
Is there such a thing, Adrian? Is there such a thing as a geek flag?
I don't know. Is it because it's Geek Pride? Does that make you?
That's what I'm thinking. Should we be flying a flag, like a literal flag, like a geek flag?
I'd say if you have a Star Wars flag or a Star Trek flag, or like you're already flying it, right?
You're already there.
If you're letting say, or you got tattoos, related to sci-fi, like there are plenty of people out there already letting people know about their geek pride.
Let that geek flag fly, ladies and gentlemen.
And it's cool that it's kind of mainstream to be able to do that. Like you can be a geek and be cool, whereas you watch some older movies and like the worst thing you could be is a nerd or a geek or something like that. Yeah.
The geek shall inherit the earth.
That's right. Yeah, it was only off by one letter.
It's okay to be intelligent now.
How about that?
Oh. All right, quick announcement here. Our teams from Security Weekly and SE Media were on site at RSA Conference 2023, delivering in-depth reporting, analysis, and interviews from the conference. If you are unable to join us in person or didn't catch the live streams, you can access all of our RSA Conference 2023 coverage at securityweekly.com/RSAC. And there are some really great interviews in there. At least half a dozen of us were doing those interviews too, and it was cool. I got to meet at least one other host in person for the first time. I had no idea Mike from ASW was so tall. All right, now for the news. You can check out securityweekly.com/ESW319 if you want to check out the stories that we're going to be talking about. As usual, we may not get to all of them. We'll see, but yeah, there's some good stuff there. I had some time for some commentary on there, and yeah. So as usual, let's start out with funding. Some pretty light funding. I'm seeing a lot of stories basically saying things are still looking pretty rough out there in terms of the market, and it's interesting. We seeing a lot of international funding and stuff like that, which is really, really cool. So the funding we do see, like it's not all U.S. based, Silicon Valley based, or Tel Aviv based. It's there's more and more Israel as time goes on, more and more startups based out of there. But I also see a lot more Europe, a lot more India, a lot more places like that.
Yeah, when there's not great locations to be putting money to work or capital to work inside the U.S., you got to find new locations, right? The U.S. is down, and some of the other general common markets are down. It makes more sense to put money to work in Europe and other alternate places. So, not surprised, and really cool to see it building infrastructure and ecosystems in other locales.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when I was down in when I was working for a Brazilian company, I was floored at the size of the startup scene there. Like Sao Paulo is this huge tech hub. I mean, it's huge in every description of the word. It's like 22 million people or something like that. But tons of tech startups down there. Yeah, so Kubernetes founders launch a startup, StackLock. I thought we might have mentioned this last week, but if not, yeah. So this is I don't know. Some of these companies we have just coming out of stealth here strike me as a bit late to market. Like containers. I feel like container security is fairly, that market is fairly overcrowded. And then also we have a Lakeland. Lakeland, is that the name of the company or where they are? Lakeland based. What is Hook Security is the name of it, but yet another security awareness training company.
I mean, seriously, all these markets. What are you doing different, right? That's the fundamental.
Right.
The thing I always ask myself when I see some of these things, and maybe the Kube one's not a good example, but certainly a training one. And I've never met with that company, so I don't know anything about them. They may be doing something absolutely unique and interesting, but you really got to figure out a way to bubble that to the top of your press release, right?
Yeah.
You can't just say we're doing yet another X, in this case, training, cybersecurity training, without saying how you're any better than anybody else in an overcrowded, saturated old market, right? So that always blows my mind.
The latest thing we've seen in this market for a differentiator is hiring actual, people with psychology background, stuff like that, that really understand how the human brain works, and how to set the right incentives and things like that. But even that market's crowded. Like we've talked about a ton of those, and we've actually had some of them. We've interviewed some folks on the show as well. So
and that's been kind of a trend for 5 or so years. This one says, I don't know much about it, and you need a subscription to read the whole announcement. But it says it uses humor and psychology. So I think that was maybe what they were attempting to get at as far as the differentiator. But like you said, it's not apparent. Maybe it works. Cybersecurity awareness training is not the best, right? And it's for a lot of companies, I know even for my company, and we're a cybersecurity company, a lot of people who work at the company still think of it as a compliance activity. It gets sent to us by the people team. We all go, oh God, I have to sit here and do an hour of training and take a quiz. And we're in security, right? So, hopefully they do something different. It isn't really apparent from this, but I think you're right in that even if you're not doing something different, but you do it better, it needs to be more apparent, because otherwise, I just sort of glossed over this when you sent the stories out, because it's like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think somebody should take a $20 million worth of investment and have the entire training section of videos narrated and comedically delivered by Chris Rock. That would be fantastic.
I would listen to Sam Jackson do cybersecurity awareness training narration.
That's what I was thinking.
Yell at people who don't get the right answer.
That was kind of the idea with I think it was Habituate, where they were actually they kind of set up in LA, right? And they're tapping into the availability of local actors and stuff like that to put together their security awareness training videos. And the idea was to up the level of quality of that content to where it wasn't soul sucking to consume it.
And how did that work out for him?
I have no idea. I have not checked in on Habituate in a while. Do you know?
No, I'm looking right now.
I was wondering what you were typing there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. Their founder, Chad, kind of made a name for himself for things unrelated to the company, but
he did, yes. And I remember Chad now. Yeah, the last funding round was April 30th, right? 2020, Adrian. So they haven't been funded in over 3 years. So,
okay. Are they still around?
That's tough.
Tell me.
Anyways, this is one hell of a rat hole just to talk about
security awareness training,
humor in videos. Now, that being said,
how is this market doing though? Is what we're asking.
Yeah, when KnowBe4 came out with their video content, it was super popular. A lot of people liked it, and that lasted for me like maybe 3 episodes before I learned to just mute the tab and ignore it when I'm doing my training and watching the video. So, it has to be absolutely amazing and impeccable content for people to bother.
They were acquired by Arctic Wolf.
Habituate was.
Yeah. Yeah, in 2021. Yeah, I don't think they shared the deal price, but yeah, it's a pretty good exit. Arctic Wolf has been, even through the downturn, has been doing pretty well, I think.
This is a hard market. I've heard of a couple of companies in the space recently laying off decent portions of their workforce.
Yeah. The layoffs have not stopped.
Nope.
Yeah. So it's hard because I think at this point, people don't necessarily feel that it's working great. there's not a huge amount of innovation. It is a compliance activity for most companies, but I don't know if this is going to be a market for long, but it definitely seems like a hard time to come into that market.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess, so the other thing, when you have a saturated market and it's mostly compliance and people hate it, yeah, there's an opportunity to disrupt it with, a better quality product, right? So, maybe that's what's happening here, is that the security awareness market has been around long enough that it's now the BlackBerry, and we're waiting for the iPhone to come in, and disrupt everything and come in with a better product. So, maybe. Yeah,
there would have to be so much improvement, though. Like, seriously, I mean, how do you make that stuff truly entertaining that people care? Because the KnowBe4, I forget what they called the video series that KnowBe4 did. It was even popular on YouTube in isolation, right? You could go to YouTube.
Yeah, they were showing it in movie theaters, right?
Yeah, and I forget the name of it. It was The Inside Man or something. Inside Man, I think, was the
I think
series.
You got it.
Yeah, and listen, man, I just didn't have time for it. Mute it, background. You know how powerful that content would have to be for me to spend an hour watching it or whatever, half an hour watching it.
Right, but if you were required to watch it, it would be preferable to.
I was required to watch
you
it,
just muted,
and I still just muted the tab and made it seem like I was watching it, right?
Oh yeah, no, I get what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, maybe more just in time. So companies have tried to do that, where you insert JavaScript into a website, and kind of wag the finger, or, show somebody a better way of doing something. Like I've seen some approaches like that use like browser plugins, stuff like that try and correct bad behaviors in real time. But you got to be in line. It's tricky to do.
If I click on a gnarly link,
pops up and says, "It seems like you're about to click on an email that looks like a fish. Are you sure you want to do that?"
Or no, better yet, Sam Jackson to pop up and yell at me in my own browser.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Oh, that would be great. Let's see. So Spider Oak is a weird company. We talked about them, I think, back in January, and I thought that was also a funding announcement. So I don't know what the heck is going on with them, but they're like entirely focused on software that goes in space. They're partnering with Space Force. It's a weird pivot. Like, it's the same products, but just kind of pivoting specifically towards basically going all in on like NASA and SpaceX RFPs, I guess.
I just want to hear the fundraising pitch. I just want to hear a recording of that fundraising pitch. Like, how does that even go? We're going to go to Mars. When we go to Mars, we need to secure the soft underbelly of our spaceships. I mean, like, that just sounds awesome. I want to hear that pitch someday.
Yeah, soft underbelly. Did you pull that right out of or is that coincidence?
No, I think I did. I think I glanced at the press release as I was talking.
Yeah, it's in the article.
That'd be a heck of a coincidence, because they say that right in the second paragraph of the.
Yeah, I didn't read the whole thing, but the quotes caught my eye.
Yeah. Yeah, I got to protect against those interstellar hackers or something.
Protect the entire space ecosystem from ground to orbit.
I mean, there's going to be. So I saw a prediction that that the new, what's it called, Starship, the latest SpaceX rocket. That
Starlink?
It's going to drive the cost of shipping cargo down to a level where basically, cargo ships and cargo jets won't be able to compete, and it'll replace that within 10 years. What
they're saying is it's cheaper to fly stuff through space to deliver it than to do ground or to do air.
Well, and it's suborbital, so they don't really go into space, but I think it's that combined with the time difference. You're talking about it getting there in like 3 hours versus 3 weeks. Versus via cargo ship or something like that, or a month, or half a day or longer via cargo plane.
Yeah, so, but you have to run the risk of your stuff exploding in orbit.
Well, I mean, how many thousands of cars have been lost to cargo ships getting sunk? in the last year
or
alone.
rubber duckies.
It was like 300,000 cars. Like they were one of a kind, like supercar, hypercar, like $3 million cars that are at the bottom of the Atlantic right now.
Adrian, you want to go fishing? Let's go fishing, buddy.
Let's dust off our scuba gear.
And how old are ships, right? How old is shipping stuff across oceans? And they're still losing that much cargo.
Ships been around, I guess. Yeah, I think Spider is interesting. I mean, what's the hook here? Like Tyler said, what is the pitch? Like securing Kazaa and LimeWire in space, like having these peer-to-peer networks that need security and end-to-end communication and satellite-to-satellite peer-to-peer storage. I don't get it.
That's what we need is secure LimeWire in space.
Absolutely, Kazaa for the win.
They need to steal music too.
Yeah, Napster. We can have this Napster by Spider.
But yeah. I mean, to my point about like space becoming like a commercial, like shipping. I learned recently that shipping is where insurance came from. Insurance was invented because shipping was so so hit or miss on whether or not your cargo would get there. That insurance
I learned that too when I wrote my insurance piece, and ironically, or coincidentally, I guess more appropriately, I just finished writing a piece on security in space. Like this was the topic that our PR person gave me for my upcoming newsletter, and I was like, oh God, this is going to be just so out there, no pun intended. Yeah. And I got into it, and it's actually pretty interesting how much space-based stuff rules our ground-based, earth-based lives. So I was kind of into it. Speaking of, Geek Day or whatever it is today, and it very much, a lot of the background reading I did was on the lower barrier to entry, i.e. cost and capabilities. I mean, that's not, I'm not saying that the next time I ship flowers to somebody for Mother's Day that I'm going to use a space-based delivery mechanism, but it was really interesting how so many of the things that we do on a day-to-day basis could be disrupted if, there's a space-based attack.
But think how impressive it would be when that space pod lands in their backyard and then opens up to show that there's a bouquet there. Happy Mother's Day, Mom, as she's freaking
right?
out.
Like nothing says I love you like a spaceship landing in your backyard.
Absolutely. But all jokes aside, I mean, I get that there are concerns. I mean, certainly latency is a big issue when it comes to communicating between ground and space, and even space to space. You're
Which
talking
is why Starlink is
thousands
so low,
of miles, right? Really. And so how do you ensure that communication is secure? I don't know, again, what the pitch or the hook is around that. We have a lot of technology for the internet that can be reapplied, but certainly we need to do better than we have been because our current communications aren't that great anyway.
It's really upsetting when your GPS goes down and you don't know the roads because you haven't looked at an actual map in 25 years.
Oh, yeah. All right, let's move on here. Manifest Cyber was kind of interesting. So that's supply chain SBOM stuff. Approve of the name Manifest. For software developers, if you understand what the purpose of a manifest file is, in like a WAR file or something like that, or a jar. I guess surely it's used outside of just Java. I don't know, but that's a lot of my background is in Oracle and Java and Sun. So, but don't hate me. But
we don't hate you for your age. That would be ageism, Adrian.
Good name though. I mean, immediately like it fits with what they do.
Yeah, they're good people too. I've had the opportunity to meet them a couple times and work with them. Really like the folks. That's interesting right now is that SBOM space. Let's call it managing open source or supply chain security or your SBOM management. It is a overly invested spot right now, and an overly hot number of young startups all trying to tackle a very similar problem there. None of which are overly exciting. And this is not commenting on Manifest in particular, but just right. That space right now is so slammed with young companies that have no clear differentiation and an ability to provide a value proposition that's strong, that I'm struggling to find a winner in that space. Manifest may be one of them. They are doing some unique approaches to actually managing your SBOMs and providing actionable output from those SBOMs. But not everybody uses SBOMs. And the question is that going to be a big enough market for them to really tackle?
I mean, it feels like it should be a reporting feature of some kind of CI/CD platform, security platform or something like that, right? Or not even security platform.
Component of software composition analysis. Your old SCA vendor should be able to do this.
Yeah. It seems like it should plug into one of those existing things that already has access to the code and everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let's see. So acquisitions here, there's some interesting stuff. Siren, we talked about at the beginning of the year. It was like a 25-year-old, I think they were founded in the 90s, Israeli email security company. I think they actually started out with their own email client and stuff like that, and they kind of naturally moved into security in the early 2000s. So they were right on top of, the I love you virus and like all the email-borne threats and stuff like that, and did very well there. Cool. But didn't survive, and they shut down they laid off all their employees, at least in late December, early January, something like that. It looks like, so good news is they're able to sell off some of their assets, just mostly like threat intel related assets. Bad news is that those threat intel databases were only worth like $3.5 million. So yeah, rough. Pretty rough.
That's a rough exit. At least it wasn't zero, like many of them actually go to.
Yeah. Yep.
But who saw the money? Is the investors. Nobody else got any of that money. Sure. So at the end of the day, do we really care that the investors got paid back at least a fraction of what they put in? Probably not. They probably don't care either.
Right. And I think they did have some investment towards the end of the life of the company, whereas, kind of in the middle there, they were self-sustaining. But yeah, trying to keep the lights on, keep things going for the last couple of years. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a Swedish company, Curity, that got looks like it got acquired by a PE firm, but the write-up describes it as an investment. But I think it might be a majority investment, otherwise known as an acquisition. But and then Eclectic IQ sells its agent software and engineering assets to ReliaQuest. So we've seen ReliaQuest do a couple of these. Digital Shadows was not one of those. That was a proper acquisition, but we've seen them do a couple others where it was basically an acqui-hire and acquired some software along with that acqui-hire, which is what this one looks like.
Well, this one by the wording of it, Adrian, actually appears to be asset only. So we don't want the people, we want the tech only. And so it's a little bit of a different cut. When you talk about an asset sale, it usually doesn't involve the human beings. Yeah, I thought there was something in there that made me think there were some folks going along with it. I thought I saw the word. It says in the opening that that today they announced they had sold their endpoint detection talent and software capabilities. So it's kind of a weird definition. Did you sell the humans or not? As odd as that comes across, you get the point. But yeah, you're right. I'm not sure it's safe to assume that talent in that context means humans. And it could just be like one or two researchers that are strong inside of the threat hunting org or something, and hey, we'll throw in these two people as well, or some engineers who understand the software. Yeah, and continue to develop it. Yep.
Or in the near future, they're AI bots and components.
Yeah. Well, that's actually what it says, Sean. It says, partway down through, it says, founder of ReliaQuest says, we know how important it is that security teams have actionable data quickly. When combined with our recently announced generative AI capability within gray matter intelligent analysis, these new agent assets will allow ReliaQuest customers to drastically reduce their mean time, blah, 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 right? So it sounds like they're going to layer it into an AI type solution, and they didn't need the people. We're going to do this in an automated way. Where do you guys want to go next? Anything in particular, Katie, that drew your eye from the stories today?
didn't see it on here, but actually the story that was of most interest to me this morning was the CSO article on Joe Sullivan. I don't know if we need to revisit that or talk about it, but that was sort of on my mind.
Yeah, what's sure. The TLDR on the article, Katie?
Well, Deborah Radcliffe, who is a longtime cybersecurity journalist, very well known, well respected, talked to Joe a little bit about what he did and did some research on what it means. And reading it really drives home the point that, first of all, you absolutely 100% need a CYA if you're a CISO, and that the judge in this case felt like, based on how this was written, that the judge in this case was saying, I'm making an exception here because I want this to be a very, very strict warning that responsibility, stops with the person who makes the action, which is a little bit concerning because, of course, nobody operates in a vacuum, right? In a company, it's almost entirely impossible to do so. And all along, Joe has maintained that he was communicating with people. I believe that is the case. Did he communicate with enough people at the organization? That I don't know. That I don't think we'll ever know. But it sounds like he was very, very much thrown under the bus for a lot of this, which could be concerning to anybody who wants to go into a CISO role. So even if you are covering your own ass, if your company is not willing to back you up, if your management, your executive team, your board is not willing to back you up, this really, really puts security people in a bad place. And the article was written very, very well by Deb, and it said that, the whole goal, and Joe's whole goal, was to keep this out in the public eye, to drive home the point that it is always a risk trade-off, right? If you take the role of an executive, whatever line of business that's in, you always take the role with a heavy responsibility. But it also focused on, there was a petition written to this judge from about 50 other CISOs saying, wait a minute, this, the worst thing that could happen is that you scare people away from the profession, because then we're not going to have anybody in the profession. So I just thought the article was interesting. There were no big ahas, but it was very well written. And I think it makes some very valid points about how we need to look at cybersecurity in the grander scheme of business. And, that proverbial seat at the table, we just really need our executive security, or our top tier security leaders, to make it more about business risk, even than we've been talking about for the past 10 or so years. It just has to be about business risk.
Yeah, it's Deb was strongly in his court throughout the process. And for those who don't know, the sentencing happened earlier this month, and he got 3 years of probation and I think some hours of community service, the typical stuff that goes along with probation. So he will be avoiding jail time. And however you feel about that, certainly I think we've learned a lot from it. And there's actually, the court transcripts, I think, are now out there. And I'm going to try and remember his name. Ryan McGeehan, I think, did a deep dive into all the lessons we can learn from the court transcripts, and paid for and went through thousands upon thousands of pages of court transcripts. And like one of those things that they found is these attackers had a list of over 100,000 working GitHub logins, and they chose Uber just because they paired that up with website popularity and sorted it by popularity, and Uber popped to the top of that list of 100,000. But the realization that they had 100,000 different directions they could have gone in. Some of those are going to be the same company. I think 13 of them were working Uber logins, so, it's not going to be 100,000 individual companies. But Tyler, that's what led me to write, what we're going to be publishing on the CyberWhy soon is the number of bad guys out there and their ability to take advantage of vulnerable targets is far outweighed by the number of vulnerable targets, I think.
Yeah.
And that's something that we learned from this case.
Just an odd scenario, just literally a probability and odds scenario.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly from the Uber breach, there was a password file that was on the network that provided access, highly privileged access to a number of systems, one of which was their enterprise management system, which then provided access to a number of other things. So yeah, that's definitely a problematic, but that's not unusual. There's a lot of companies out there that have password files that are still floating around, even with a password management system in play.
These
are admin hygiene stuff.
That was one of Uber's 3 2022 breaches, though. This was the 2016 breach.
Okay, so we're going back a while here.
Catch up, Sean. Yeah. Come on. There have been so many of them.
Catch up. I've got recency bias. I'm looking at the recent stuff.
We actually devoted an entire segment to just dissecting that breach that you're talking about, Sean. So ESW, like we broke down how the attack happened because I think it was VX Underground or somebody or a journalist or somebody went and asked them, hey, how did this work? How'd you get in? And they sent them screenshots. They detailed step by step how it happened. And it's, I mean, it's in our advantage because we get to learn these lessons, but still, it's kind of funny that we're getting more assistance from the attacker than from some of the targets that get attacked. And that's something I'd love to see change in the industry is more transparency around how breaches happen so we can learn from these failures. All right. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Katie. That's a good one. I didn't realize he had given an interview, and I'll try and include that in the show notes. Here, I'll
and
add
with
that.
Most things, it's the cover up that is the issue, not so much what was done at the time, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing that kills me about transparency is look, you've already had the breach. Like the breach is not the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario is bungling the breach. Transparency on taking the wrong actions. Like trying to hide it, trying to downplay it, which we still see companies do, which makes no sense to me because it just draws it out. It guarantees you're going to have more class action lawsuits. You're probably going to have more fines, and now potentially people going to jail.
Yeah, from what I see, Uber paid the cyber criminals $100,000 ransom in exchange for deleting their copy of the stolen data, and then was told later that Uber had to pay $148 million for the 2016 data breach and cover-up.
Right. It really was about, because then there was the question, if we get the data back, is it actually a breach? So that was brought up during the trial. But yes, it was the cover-up. It wasn't the actual breach. That threatened to send him to jail. So that's a really, really, really important part of this whole thing that I hope nobody misses. But then you get into the area of accountability. Like, why wasn't the legal team involved? Were they actually involved? And are they denying responsibility? The former CEO denied knowing anything about it. And there's pretty much good evidence that, of course, he did. So,
yeah. And the worst thing, these guys had 100,000 other attack vectors, and they're just letting them go. I mean, and they did hit another company before they got caught. So after Uber tried to sweep that under the rug, they went and hit somebody else. So at least one other company got hit by these same two guys before they were caught and put in jail. And actually, them getting caught on that second hit is how this whole thing spilled out.
And not the first time. I found an article that details, or at least provides links and information about the different Uber hacks that have happened over the time, 2014, 2016, 2017, 2018. Yeah, it's not good.
That could be your next full-time job, tracking Uber hacks.
There you go. Adrian, does that track well to story number 12, trends of ransomware resurgence after strange year in 2022 insurance data shows? I mean, they kind of they do overlap in that sense, right?
Yeah, actually. Yeah, it's a good place to go to next. And yeah, we did see a big drop in ransomware payments, a 40% drop in 2022. But yeah, I guess what they're saying is maybe those. So there's two numbers here that we need to keep separate. The number of companies that get hit for ransomware, where they suffer a breach, and somebody attempts to extort money out of them, and then the other number we're talking about are the companies that actually pay. So the ransomware has never quite hit $1 billion globally. It was close in 2021, and then it dropped down to I think 500-600 million last year. And for comparison, business email compromise is something like 2.4 billion. It's in the U.S. alone, not even globally. So BEC is much, much larger than ransom payments in terms of direct losses, at least. But yeah,
and also not on this list. And so I'll bring up another thing that none of you are expecting. There was a 60 Minutes interview with Rachel Toback about grandparent schemes. Did anybody see that?
I did not see it,
not.
but I've heard of these schemes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is not a new kind of scam at all. But she was on for a short period. It was a whole segment, but it talked about how threat actors are now using AI to mimic relatives' voices.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And
I need you to post bail for me. That kind of scenario.
Yeah. The first story was about some grandmother who was like 80, who's in air quotes. I'm doing air quotes here. Grandson calls her up, says she was in an accident. He was in an accident and needs money right away. And the police are saying that he's at fault. They're going to take him to jail right away. And she played this for her daughter, who was the kid's mother, and they were both like, wow, this sounds so eerily like the kid. And of course, we in security know to be really careful about these things. And when you start hearing things that sound a little off, like, oh my God, you've got to go to the bank right now, and a courier's coming to your house to pick it up.
Yeah,
for
urgency.
A lot of us, that would set off some warning bells. But let's say you're just an average person, you don't know much about security, and somebody you love is saying, or who you think you love is saying, I'm going to go to jail. I think a lot of people out of the goodness of their heart would just jump right on it.
Yeah, and urgency is one of those key red flags that allow you to catch some of those. Well, and of course, it's the same thing that makes it hard, to catch those because, I mean, it's going to be urgency combined with something you're emotional about, right? Like a loved one. So that on this segment, Rachel demonstrates an actual scam against one of the show's producers. And they were just gobsmacked about it. It was pretty great. Yeah. Yeah, and just people keeping up with what's possible now. Like it's tough. Like the average person probably doesn't know that it's possible to mimic somebody's voice that closely or videos that closely. I feel like videos is like that's a little bit better known, but there have been some examples of that out there. But yeah, 60 Minutes is definitely going to reach a crowd that we don't reach with this podcast, right? Like we probably have very little overlap with the 60 Minutes watchers. Here. If I were to guess, I could be wrong, but
I think you're wrong.
Okay. So if you want to dive more into these kinds of stats, we talked about this a few weeks ago, but the FBI's annual Internet Crime Report came out. The one for 2022 came out maybe a month or two ago, and you can get that from ic3.gov. And a lot of interesting details in there. It's good for kind of the big picture. Like, first of all, I had no idea BEC was like 5 times bigger than ransomware. That was news to me. And then like romance scams are way bigger than I thought. Like huge. They might even be bigger than ransomware. I don't remember. But
It makes sense, right? These people are preying on people's emotions, and what area is more emotional than a potentially romantic relationship?
Yeah. By victim loss, romance scams are number 5, 735 million in 2022. Million. And BC isn't even the largest one. Investment scams are the biggest ones. That's the biggest category with 3.3 billion. I wonder how much of that is crypto related.
I've been outed. I'm sorry. I won't do it.
I was going to say, how much of that is crypto? Exactly.
How much of that is Tyler?
They've got it here. Crypto is 2.4 billion of that, it looks like. And specifically wallet theft alone is 1.3 billion. So that's just like tricking people out of like sharing their wallet keys or whatever.
That makes a lot of sense. Or stealing their images.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
NFTs, sorry. Lost the
I was just asked
acronym at the moment.
I was just asked this past week to please email a copy of my license to someone, and I'm like, no.
No.
Absolutely not. Not happening. And this was a law firm, by the way. A law firm asked me to do that. I asked them, where is your secure portal? And they said, what?
Yeah, right. Like I was just filling out benefits information yesterday, and it's still a handwritten form, to select my medical benefits. Like what the heck is I'm going straight from like playing with the latest advancements in AI to like wondering why my hand hurts because it's so infrequent I write with a pen, right? I'm trying to fill out these medical insurance forms. It's just the difference between those industries is just so vast, it seems. I don't know. I guess it's more secure for it to be on paper. I don't know. I don't know why that's not a form I fill out on a website.
There are some advancements that's been done there. We use a system at TriMark that everything is online and digitally signed and validated. So there is a way to do it.
Yeah. For sure. And there are third-party companies that are identity verification.
Yeah,
of course, they cost money to use them. So, the company would have to invest in that. But I don't know if you're talking about this type of personal data, a breach of your customer's data is going to cost you a lot more than an app.
Yeah, it's interesting. And actually, a cybersecurity company, Dragos, had a blog post that they put out last week because they had an incident where a new employee had their personal email compromised prior to this employee starting and going through the onboarding process. The way that it was structured, the personal email address was used to onboard this new employee, which meant that the attacker was able to onboard to a point. Didn't have access to any data. They identified it. They stopped it. They've added in some countermeasures for the future. But it's very interesting when you start looking at the trust of as you're bringing people in and having automation and these flows. You usually often have personal email as part of that communication and even that onboarding process, unless there's additional steps to validate it. You start adding in, well, how would you normally validate it? You would have a phone call or something where you talk to the person. You pair that with what Katie brought up, where attackers can actually impersonate someone's voice. This becomes pretty interesting. And then you throw AI into the mix, and you could have a situation where companies could be breached through basically the side door where it says employees only. It gets pretty fascinating.
Yeah, and it's funny. Somebody brings up in the chat here, like if you push back on some of the stuff, somebody asks you for a social security number, you just tell them no. Like I remember back in the day, my ex-wife used to do that with doctor's offices. She'd just leave that blank and they'd be like, oh, you forgot to fill this out. She's like, no, I'm not giving you my social. And that, like, they were fine. It was all fine. They didn't actually need it. They just ask for it because it's on the form. Yep. They don't even know why they're asking for it.
Yeah, I've had that happen with my phone number, and they say, "Can we have your phone number?" And I say, "No, thank you." And they always stop and look at me and go,
"Wait, that's an option?"
I always gave my phone number to Radio Shack, so that way they could let me know when I needed more batteries. But you're right. Lots of times I've been at a store, I've been checking out, and they're like, "Yeah, what's your phone number?" I'm like, "I don't think you need that." And they go, "I guess I don't," and they continued with the transaction.
If I have to use it for loyalty points, this is terrible, and I'm so sorry to whomever has this number now. I use the phone number from the last line I had, landline I had like 20 years ago. I'm sorry if you're listening.
You're the one. I was wondering about all these random calls. Fun fact, you could actually use for most area codes in the United States, 867-5309, the number for Jenny from the famous song,
right,
for different loyalty things if you don't want to sign up for it. I may or may not have done that before. And what's interesting is when they ask, it'll be Jenny, Jennifer, and sometimes other random names as well.
That's great.
Nice.
All right. So number 13 here, we've got a new .zip TLD. And
such a horrible idea.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm of the opinion that it's kind of, the hand wringing isn't particularly justified here. I don't think it's going to result in a major uptick in phishing.
I don't think it's going to result in a major uptick. I think it will increase the amount of successful phishing attacks that happen, because someone's just going to look and see all the attacker has to do now is do @ and then the name of their domain name or .zip, like phishing, or they could make it, I don't know, financial file.zip or whatever it is as the actual domain name. Put at the end of whatever the URL is to make it look like it's a legit thing. A lot of download links look like that. This is going to make it way more difficult for people to actually look at a URL to determine whether or not this is where they should be going or not. Now, the solution and fix of this should be more on the easy side, where if you have web content filtering, you can just block the .zip domain. If you have DNS type things, you could block .zip domains.
A lot of people are doing that.
Even in Exchange Online, there's transport rules to block email that can come through with .zip URLs. But people have to take that action, and people have to track these TLDs in order to have an idea that this is something that should be done. I think it's annoying. I think it's an annoyance. It's a distraction.
All the people paying for .zip domains that I've seen so far, though, are security people and IT people who think it's hilarious, and they're putting their blogs there. So yeah, I don't know. I think there's so few cases where you're gonna download a zip in that scenario anyway. I don't know, like firmware.zip.
Something to definitely look at the end of the year to see what trends are coming out of this. I think it's a horrible idea.
I think it's hilarious, and I own a couple .zip domains. Moving on. Agree to disagree on that. So the drag your GAN thing is kind of just talking about like going from filling out medical insurance forms by hand and then seeing the latest AI can do. This is the first AI, like image-based AI thing that I've seen in a while that really kind of took my breath away. And basically it's a very visual thing. I recommend going and checking out the videos, but it's something that makes image manipulation as easy as just dragging points on an image. So like they have a picture of a lion, and you want to move the lion's head, you just grab it by the nose and you move its whole head. And it looks like a picture with a lion's head turned. And it's where it gets really crazy is they have some like microscope images and stuff like that. Like they start to hint at, okay, here's where the nasty stuff can happen, where people can kind of maybe fudge some science, fudge some evidence and things like that. Like it becomes really easy to edit an image in such a way that it the image doesn't look like it's been tampered with. So
yeah,
and I don't know how true that is. I don't know how easy it is to detect this kind of image tampering.
What's absolutely impressive to me, and I'm looking at the Lion one playing it in the background in real time here, watching it, is it's a standing shot, still photo, not a video, but a still photo of a lion, and the lion is standing, and they drag its nose, but it's not just like a stupid cheesy like the head turns kind of minimalist approach. If you watch, the entire body reacts as if a lion's head is turned, so its whole body actually shifts to match the movement of the head in real time. That's what makes that completely impressive.
Yeah, the shoulders move, and it understands enough to know that if the shoulders move, then the rear end has to also compensate.
Has to adjust, right?
Because it understands through, I guess, like consuming enough photos of lions, that there are certain ways that the bones work and the joints work and stuff like that. So it's trying to avoid giving you like an impossible scenario with that photo.
It's completely impressive. I saw that on Twitter before I even saw it here today, and was just like, "Oh my goodness!"
And there's some really useful. There's some really useful use cases. Like they've got a fashion use case where they just take a woman wearing a skirt and they just stretch the skirt down longer. They're like just just playing with aspects of the image. And like I can see some very, very productive, useful use cases of this. But like any of these super powerful AI tools, it's all dual use. You can do some.
Yeah, they took a square-on photo of a lion too, and they drag its mouth, which is closed in the photo. They drag its mouth open, and not only does the mouth open, but it puts teeth, tongue, everything in there automatically to fill in the gap that never existed in the original photo.
Because it's consumed millions of photos of lions and it knows what the inside of a lion's mouth looks like, right?
Amazing.
I just want to go back to family photos and move eyes and heads so that everyone's looking at the camera. That's what I want to
make them. But the awkwardness is what makes it special. Come on, John.
Including the dog. The dog's never looking.
I remember the first time I saw an image like this. I remember Wendy Nather sent me a picture of me and her at RSA. Like we had a picture, I think David Spark took a picture of us at RSA. We both did a like man on the street style interview for David Spark, who does some other podcasts. He's a great guy. And she sent it to me, and my image of myself was just really upsetting. And like there was something about it that just gave me that kind of
uncanny valley.
Yeah, uncanny valley situation. And I realized that something on her iPhone or in her photo software or something like that fixed my teeth and took the gap away from my teeth. Like, and my teeth did not look natural at all. Like it was almost like I put some dentures in or something like that. And that's what was making me uncomfortable about that photo.
Yeah. The face one here, Adrian, speaking of that, the face one on that same website that we're linked to in the show notes, there's one called Face, and it's a picture of a young lady who's sitting there. She has no smile. And they give her a complete and beautiful smile. They completely just changed the photo and gave her a beautiful smile.
Can I hire these people for my wedding photos?
You sure can.
Well, I mean, I think they share the code for this app.
Yeah, I think it's open. I think you can get it.
Amazing.
Yep, it's on GitHub. It's called Draggan, Draggan. Yeah, I just wish I had time to play with all this stuff. I just don't. Is the problem? They make a cat wink. That's funny. It's crazy. Yeah.
This really leads to the question of like what is real, and what is art versus what you capture. I mean, one of the biggest, and I've been in photography for a long time, and one of the challenges has been capturing the moment as you see it. What you see through the lens. I often can visualize something, but capturing that and having that in the photo can be challenging and difficult. And there's always this question with Photoshop: does it enhance? Does it change it? Does it change reality? Now we're really looking at bending reality, especially when you talk about nature photography, which is one of the toughest things to do. You have this massive lens, 400, 800 millimeter lens. You're sitting there stalking a lion to get a picture of it. One of the most amazing pictures of a lion I've ever seen was a lion as it's running towards the photographer and ends up mauling the photographer, but the photographer gets the shot, and it's just absolutely incredible.
Because that was worth it.
But now we're looking at a situation where
he was going to get mauled regardless, right? So
you just get a picture of a lion sitting at the zoo and actually make it look like it's fierce or ferocious or winking or doing something wacky. Yeah. I mean, the memes write themselves. It really does beg the question, like, what is reality? Because it could be reality. It's a thing that you could manipulate, or if you wait long enough, you could get that shot. But it's very interesting if there's going to be some in the photography world is going to have to be something where there's category for AI modified versus not.
Yep. So
because it is very different than Photoshop.
Speaking of that, Daniel Miessler actually has so he made a standard for that, and he's got 6 different categories between like you can't use Lightroom or Photoshop without using AI in some form. Like AI is just baked into a lot of those tools. And so he's got different categories for depending on how much AI helped versus things that are partially or entirely AI generated with almost no human intervention. I forget what he calls it. We don't have it linked here today. It's AI influence level. He calls it AIL, or AI influence level. And he's got 6 different levels from 0, no AI involved, 100% human created, to 5, which is AI created with very little human involvement.
I think it's necessary. I mean, I think the most I've really done in Lightroom is lighten up the scene a little bit or tweak some of the settings. But yeah, you can get creative with that. I'm definitely not the Photoshop expert like my wife is.
Yeah, so I've reduced some under eye baggage, but this sort of leads into the whole idea of social media regulation, and there's been a lot of talk about this lately because of generative AI and because of these apps that can make a lion jump for joy or whatever the heck you're going to do. That there are big groups that want to regulate, like, warnings or just disclaimers on anything that's been tampered with via AI, so that it doesn't cause some of the societal and mental health issues that it can. I mean, it's one thing if you're making a lion turn its head. It's not right or wrong, whatever your personal opinion is, but when it actually creates this alternate reality that people can't achieve, especially young kids who don't necessarily know the difference. It's something to think about, having these
what happens if we can't detect, if it gets to it seems inevitable it's going to get to a point where you can't tell if an article was written by a human or an AI. In some use cases, maybe that doesn't matter, but in others, like art competitions and stuff like that, it's incredibly important.
Yeah, the CEO of OpenAI was in Congress, I believe it was last week, or maybe that was the week before, but basically was talking about to Congress, there needs to be an agency of AI that has some oversight and provides some guidance around AI. And he's concerned. So the person who actually is running OpenAI has concerns around this because there's lots of LLMs around there. The Pandora's box has been open at this point. And if we don't have some sort of guidance or guiding factors around AI use and what the capabilities are, what they should be. I mean, it's kind of like Ian Malcolm from Jurassic Park going, you were so focused on whether or not you could, you never even thought about whether or not you should. I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember the exact quote.
No,
and
that's
like,
close.
all you did was you stood on the shoulders of giants and then you added to this and you built on this next thing. We're on, and then there's even a comment about discovery. It's like, how can you be on the edge of discovery and not take the next step? And Ian Malcolm's like, well, discovery is a horrible thing. It causes lots of pain for a lot of people. And you talk about this thing as it's wonderful.
Act, he describes it,
but
as
there's
a violent
impact.
Act.
Yeah. So there's my pop reference movie quote of the day is from Jurassic Park for those who are tracking.
And so if you talk to people who actually collect art, like the first big impact I think from this was the image generation, right? The generative AI, DALL-E, Midjourney, spitting out images, and artists. My mom is a fairly famous artist, and she does traditional oil on canvas and charcoal on plywood. We call them her plywood people. You'd have to see it. But yeah, and she's very upset about this also. But I noticed like one of the things missing there is, if you're going to buy an $8,000 piece of art or an $80,000 piece of art or $8 million piece of art, like the art is maybe like 10% of what makes it interesting. The other 90% is knowing who the artist is and the story that came out of like why they produced this piece of art, where they made it. The one time it was like the only reason we know what the Mona Lisa is because it was stolen back in the early 20th century. That's what made it famous. And none of that storytelling is going to exist around a piece of AI art that just gets generated and spat out.
But then that raises the question, generations who are raised on this, are they going to care?
Are they going to value that, or did they just
we know because generations before us cared and shared these stories.
I think they both coexist. Like AI generated stuff isn't going away. So
I think I can push back a little bit on you, Adrian. Just because a computer spits out the artwork does not necessarily mean there's not a story behind the prompting decisions that made up that piece of artwork. Like, think about the fundamental decisions to request, hey, and I believe I've found your mother's work online. It looks amazing, like really, really cool stuff. How does she make the decision to make that, right? Like in the moment, how does she make the decision to choose that picture, that fundamental cut, that fundamental piece of whatever it is that she's pulling together? And I think the prompting process of creating and tweaking and moving things around, that's its own story. And I think, listen, art people can make a story out of anything, right? And I think there's going to be a story behind the decisions that make up the
that's part of how you sell it. That's part of the selling process is you have to be able to tell a story about it.
Yep.
And you tell that story to the people at the gallery, and the gallery tells that story to the people who come and look at it, and that's how you get it sold. But yeah, you're right, Tyler. You can, I mean, the prompt has to come from somewhere. Like the idea comes from the same place. The process, the bit in the middle is very different. And some of the story does come from that process, and I think you do miss a little bit of that.
I think the process is just different. Like fundamentally,
NFTs
the process
can be stolen,
is still
right?
going to be a process.
Maybe there is an opportunity for an NFT to be famous because it was stolen by some kind of famous digital art heist or thief.
That's our second mention of NFT today, which is probably more than there's been in the past several months. Thank goodness.
The next installment in the Ocean's 11 series is going to be very weird.
Yeah, absolutely. Ocean's 14 or 15.
All right, let's hit this squirrel story and then let's wrap this up. So today's squirrel story is Montana banning TikTok. Does anybody have some heat behind this one that they want to bring in?
Yeah, it's funny when this news article broke, I was writing about it for the Cyber Y, and for those of you that read the Cyber Y, I tend to put like snarky comments, funny pictures, stuff like that. I actually, just to tie to the last story, I tried to do my own personal digital artwork of the Montana governor dancing a TikTok dance, which is what I was attempting to do, and it turns out I'm not smart enough to do that. So if any listeners out there can take, I forget the gentleman's name, whatever that governor's name is, read the article. Take a photo of him and make him doing a TikTok dance and send it to me. I want to use it because I think it would be funny as hell.
Yeah, I think that's inevitable. Somebody's going to do that if they haven't already.
But for those that didn't read the story, Montana has decided to officially ban TikTok in the state of Montana, which, besides fundamentally being completely stupid, is almost impossible to enforce, just like anything else when you're talking about network-based bans. Now, Adrian,
wait, there is no Great Wall of Montana?
it's easy to enforce against the stupid people who don't want to take the time to bypass it, which is probably the bulk of people that would be, looking at TikTok, I guess, with any regularity. Did I just slam public TikTok use? I think it did. But at the end of the day, it's kind of a stupid attempt at stopping TikTok in the state of Montana.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, people are just going to find the same videos on YouTube anyway that are cross-posted into other. It doesn't make sense.
And the law explicitly has no punishment for anybody consuming TikTok. It's all aimed at any attempt by the people running TikTok to get people in Montana to be able to see it. There's a $10,000 a day fine. Well, is that a $10K a day fine to Montana or to TikTok? Meaning, if you don't self-ban packets to Montana, or is it finding creators of content from creating within Montana? I've heard it's the latter, but I don't know for sure. I haven't done a deep dive on the law. No, I mean, the law is very short, but yeah, it explicitly excludes anyone that uses TikTok, any TikTok users. So it's ridiculous to begin with, but Adrian, I think you should go through we should at least talk about a couple of the sub bullets here, including cooking chicken in NyQuil, pouring hot wax on a user's face. Like, what is all this? So the law gives some examples of why it's being banned. They felt the need to say, here's why we're banning it, because TikTok fails to remove and may even promote dangerous content that directs minors to engage in dangerous activities, including but not limited to. And then if you go look at our show notes, we've got the whole list of bullet points here. One I mentioned in the intro was cooking chicken in NyQuil, pouring hot wax on a user's face, smearing human feces on toddlers, licking doorknobs and toilet seats to place oneself at risk of contracting coronavirus.
Have they never heard of the challenges that were around for years now that were on YouTube?
And that's the thing. All of this is a shrouded attempt to just ban what people see as a Chinese-based app. This is not about the damn doorknob licking.
All this stuff is also on Facebook and Instagram, right? Yes, it is. All this content is cross-posted on every other app out, every other social network, isn't it?
But we need to protect the children, Adrian.
Think about the children.
Yes. Well, you need to protect the children, and you need to protect the cars. Did you guys hear about the TikTok car theft challenge that is costing Hyundai over $200 million?
The Hyundai USB key. Yeah, because Hyundai cheaped out and didn't put immobilizers in their steering column. Yeah. Right, and so that got out on TikTok, and every stupid teen who's on TikTok is now stealing Hyundai vehicles, causing over $200 million to customers, damages to customers and stolen vehicles already, based on TikTok. Let that be a lesson to Hyundai. What? It's only 1/10 of that in Montana. Think of the money saved,
and it'll be even less in the upcoming months, right?
That's right. Think of the money saved by banning TikTok in Montana. They have dirty doorknobs and less stolen Hyundais.
My 2001 Volkswagen Passat had an immobilizer in it. Like, I don't know why Hyundai's built 2020 plus decided to leave that out. Was it the chip shortage?
I don't know. But I put a key in my mid 90s Volkswagen Passat, turned the key to unlock it, and pulled the entire core out of my car. So listen, keys don't always secure vehicles.
Please tell me that afterwards you went, Kalima.
It's exactly what I did. I wish I had it on video.
Great.
There's a new one coming out. There's a new Indiana Jones movie coming out.
Oh yes, yet another one. I did hear the rumor that Harrison Ford might die in this one because apparently that he's actually trying to kill off all of his characters.
Oh, okay.
So that he doesn't have to do anymore.
Yeah, I didn't know if you meant during filming or not.
Well, that may also happen, but I think the plan here is he's trying to kill off all of his characters so that he doesn't have to go film any more sequels, i.e. Star Wars, and now, although in Star Wars you can still come back if you're dead, apparently. So
Yeah.
It's true.
No.
Paul Walker apparently makes a cameo in the Fast X or Fast 10 movie that's out this month. So.
Oh no! Oh no!
Oh no, that's not a good idea. Yeah, I mean, if in the Star Wars universe, if you die, that just changes your opacity on when you're on screen. you then
get
become
one tenth the
slightly
screen time,
see-through,
and people can see through you.
Right.
Yeah, you become a ghost. All right, good stuff. I think we'll wrap there. Coming up next, we've got 5 micro interviews from RSA. Enjoy those. Check those out. Thanks so much to all my wonderful co-hosts here, to Katie, Sean, and Tyler for joining me today. It was a good time, a lot of fun. Look forward to seeing everybody 2 weeks from now. Next week is a holiday week, so we are bringing out an episode from the vault. I can't remember off the top of my head which one it is, but the ones I chose are really good. There's some really good ones. See y'all next time. Attackers are only getting more proficient, so how can you proactively adapt your cybersecurity strategy? Core Security by Fortra helps you uncover and prioritize the risks that pose the biggest threat to your organization. Core Impact is a penetration testing tool that safely finds and exploits vulnerabilities using the same techniques as attackers. You can conduct advanced pen tests with ease using certified exploits and automations. Take your engagements even further by pairing with our additional red teaming tools from Cobalt Strike and Outflank. Learn more at securityweekly.com/Fortra Core Security.
The Security Weekly News is live on Tuesdays and Fridays at 12 o'clock Eastern Time most every week. I try to scan and produce a quick look at some major stories to help you keep up with what's going on in and around the industry in a short format. Myself, Jason Wood, and other guest commentators provide greater insight every week. I'm Doug White, and I hope that you will look for the Security Weekly News in all of your favorite podcast catchers and subscribe for the latest content.
Welcome to RSA Conference 2023. We're recording live from Broadcast Alley here in Moscone West. I'm your host, Mike Shima, and I'm here with Jon Check, the Executive Director of Cyber Protection Solutions at Raytheon Intelligence and Space. Hello, Jon.
Hey,
welcome.
Mike. How are you today?
I'm doing very well. It's the last day of the conference. We're kicking things off. I appreciate you taking the time.
I see we've fully transitioned to only sneakers at this point.
Absolutely. Stay comfortable and relax. We got to survive.
That's right.
The other thing so companies also need to survive because CISOs don't enjoy writing those breach disclosures that start, "We take your security seriously."
Right.
So that's a little bit of a reactive response. Incidents, I'm not being pessimistic, I think, when we say that organizations are probably going to be breached in one way or another. They should be prepared, but it's a lot better to be prepared. So what are some ways that we can start thinking of incident response before the incident happens?
Well, I think the number one thing is across all of your business, no matter what the job role is, whether it's security, supply chain, legal, talent acquisition, everybody has to have some level of baseline and be a stakeholder in what your response is going to be. Communications, because it takes everybody, once something happens, to recover. And without them being aware, if the first time they really hear about it or understand what a certain type of attack might be, certain things have made it out into the public domain enough, like ransomware, where people at least have some level of understanding. But they might not understand all the other aspects of what different type of attacks might look like.
Yeah, and you rattled off a great list there, and it went well beyond just like, the developer who sees this is the RCE or this is the CVE number that they hit, and how do we respond to this? There's comms in there, there's legal, there's privacy. So, but they're not dealing with code, I don't think, all the time. So how do you bring them in? How do you say we're going to have a breach, or rather than say, without scaring them, with getting them prepared for what something looks like?
Critical part is also, so what is the role of everyone when something does happen? So the way you bring them in is, if there are, you have cybersecurity insurance, you have breach insurance. Mm-hmm. Okay, so what does that mean? What happens? How do you engage with your insurer? What is their role and responsibility? Are they going to show up with their own response teams and say, whatever teams you have, stand those down, because we'll take it from here to figure out what happened? Or you can really understand how that process works so people know where to engage and how to engage and what their roles are. There may be certain emergency procurements you need to do, or certain legal actions that need to be taken related to a breach, whether it's informing your stakeholders or other things that may require you to ensure that you're responding properly.
So these are lots of sounds like lots of documentation, processes, run books. I'm a D&D player. I like that type of tabletop gaming. I'm sure there's got to be an aspect of tabletop exercises here too. Run something through.
100%. And that's one of the critical aspects is it's hard to get people's attention to do a tabletop exercise.
Oh, yeah.
So one of the things we really try to do when we were hosting those for partner companies that we work with is getting them out of their day-to-day job for a day and really pulling them out to like almost an off-site type event where they can be focused. And you can try to get them into the mindset of a breach has happened versus, 2 hours, I spent all morning doing my day job, whatever that might be. I go into a room for 2 hours, do a tabletop exercise, checking my phone, email, smart devices the whole time, and then leave 2 hours later and did you really participate? Do you really understand? Are you really in the moment?
Away? Yeah.
That's one of the critical things. Is really got to be in the moment to really fully engage and not be distracted by all the things that are out there that like to distract us.
So what are some fun ways to set up scenarios for organizations? Because, I'm going to imagine not everybody's heard of Log4j, SolarWinds, these big things, but not everybody's going to be attacked like SolarWinds. It might be ransomware or something like that. What do you set up to get those people engaged so they're not checking their phones?
Well, we try to find something topical to the industry they're in, and where their focus is. Because there's, like you mentioned earlier, there's probably an example of your industry where somebody's been breached. Very likely. And that really gives them a good idea. So if you're a retailer, what does that supply chain look like now that your e-commerce site is down and you're losing $1 million an hour because no one can buy your products from your presence? So that's really got to think through, what does that look like? How do you have what level of resiliency could you build in? How would you get some level of that customer, externally facing site back up to where you can do what your business is there to do, which is provide that product to your customers?
And what's interesting so far is that we've talked about, you rattled off a list of people, important positions, what their roles are, responsibilities. We talked about tabletops and processes. We haven't touched on tools, and it's interesting. I think that we're coming to that last. Are they less important? What's their role in, can't the tools just protect us all from getting breached?
Just install this and it works. You don't have to worry about anything else.
It'd be so much easier.
Yeah, that's what I hear sometimes. Well, it's really the most critical thing in any tooling is really, are you taking the time to truly integrate whatever you have purchased as part of your framework of what is the key things you want to defend, and how are you taking advantage of it? Buying a tool for the sake of a tool because it will just do something makes no difference. I really, like I mentioned, like to take the KonMari approach. Get rid of the clutter. You don't need to have 50 tools that have overlap and you've got one because it does 5% of something. Is that really totally necessary if you're not going to utilize it? Or also if you're putting yourself at risk where you've got a single smart subject matter expert that's responsible for a tool. When that person leaves, that causes real problems. And we see that with our partner companies a lot of times that we work with. They have that key person leave and all of a sudden they're calling us to say, hey, can you pick this up for us? Because we can't fill this role again. This person's gone. So it's really the tooling is absolutely critical, but it all comes down, I'm in the people business. It's 100% about the people. And if the people aren't a part of how you establish the tool chain, what's it supposed to do, what are the outcomes you're desiring, and they're not given the proper training and downtime to really appreciate and think about things. It can't just be a continuous grind where they're on the job and it's the next thing coming at them.
Burnout's so easy to hit.
It's terrible. And so that's one of the things we really try to focus on, is giving people the time to, rest, refit, and retool. Nothing new.
That's a great approach, and that's treating people well, so they'd be also sharp. And that's why you also practice, but They're also not burned out. They're not just overly cynical about, why are we doing this today? I'll just hit this button.
Absolutely. I can tell from my personal experience. I used to stay up a lot. Right, didn't sleep very much. One day about 10 a.m. after working here in San Francisco, I walked to work at 6 a.m. 10 a.m. I looked down, I had 2 different colored shoes on. One had a heel about like this, one had a heel like this. I was like, sleep deprivation's a real thing.
It might have had a little bit of an impact. So that's a great counterexample of probably something not to do. We talked about communication, tabletop exercises. Do you have some other counterexamples of some ways perhaps not to prepare and not to respond that we could learn from?
Well, so like anything, when you have an emergency situation, everybody reacts differently, and so one of the big challenges is the understanding who on the team might have the sky is falling reaction and start going to panic mode. Because one of the worst things you can do when a breach or an incident happens is start taking action immediately without knowing, is that the action I should be taking at this time? If I do that, if I go run and turn off all the servers, was that really the thing I should have done? Right? You got to really, have a plan. But people panic and they're going to do something to action because their phone's blowing up, the president of the company saying, what are you doing? Right? So they're going to take an action without understanding, okay, what's the sequence of actions we're going to take? Do I need to pause for a minute and make sure we work through this if you don't have a solid plan? But for me, one of the things that I see that's the worst thing somebody do is take action immediately without understanding, should I be taking that action? It creates way more problems in the long run, every time.
Every time. Totally believe it. And goes back to the idea, just be prepared, right? There's also an aspect, I was joking because I love to make fun of the phrase, we take your security seriously. It becomes a bit of a platitude and a bit empty if it's not followed up by anything of substance. companies perhaps do need to prepare a breach disclosure of some kind. What do you look for? What do you recommend in the sense of transparency, sharing for their customers, sharing to, you've been impacted? How do you have that conversation in a positive way?
Well, we provide them with the information they need, right? That's up to them and their stakeholders, their board of directors, and the disclosures based on whatever regulations that industry needs to follow for how they're going to disclose. We certainly want to give them all the information they need, and we can give them examples of here's how it was done by companies in the past and it was perceived like it went very well, and here's examples where people maybe held on to information way too long and it was not the outcome. But that's really, again, that's that businesses based on where they want to be perceived by the public and where they're going to position themselves post-breach. And that's at a board level discussion, right? We're really there to help guide and provide information that allows them to report, but in the end, they have to make that call. And go back towards when there's an emergency and you're not prepared, you might not make the call you need to in the moment.
Absolutely. Then when you see that, how do you often see who makes that call, or do they also, even in the tabletop exercises or the processes and the planning, are there often parts of the organization that get forgotten or they get left out, and everybody's like, "Oh, we actually should have spoken to Alice, Bob, in this particular department"?
It's really a lot of times it comes down to comms, communications, making sure that they're involved, and really somebody that is a communications person understands how to communicate to your stakeholders, whether they're customers, employees, board of directors, whatever the case might be. So that's a critical aspect of how do you frame a conversation? How do you make sure people really understand what's happened? What's their role in whatever's happened? What do they need to watch out for? So I say communications is one of the key groups that's not forgotten, but a lot of times the person in charge, whoever that might be, decides, I'm going to be the communications person. I'm going to write up this email with whatever notice and send it out to people. It might not be the best approach. If you have that role, then it's really difficult because, depending on the company size, they don't have that diversification. Maybe the person...
That's true.
That's the president is the comms person, is the TA person. You never know what that person's other roles, other duties as assigned might be.
Suddenly they're wearing lots of hats, indeed. Now, I also talked about, I threw out SolarWinds, Log4j, ransomware. Are there certain types of attacks that you're seeing perhaps more prevalent now? I'm not necessarily trying to go, pull out the crystal ball, predict what the attacks are going to be, but are there certain patterns that of the type of threat actors that these are techniques they're using that people can prepare for, perhaps more so on the technology side too?
Well, it's definitely escalating, right? It's continued. Gone are the days when somebody sends you a poorly worded email. Now it's specifically targeted from your bank with your name, and maybe one of your relatives, it looks like it's coming from your relative.
Okay.
The amount of data that is out there now with the AI and those types of tools, coalescing those things based on, hey, I know who Jon Check is. I'm going to go search everything I know about him and do a very targeted campaign at him based on not just him, but, okay, who's he related to? What are the environmentals he's in? Where does that person go every day? What do they experience? That's the biggest challenges that I see is it's really escalated the targeting part of this. And that's super worrisome to me because that sophistication is way beyond what people have seen in a classic phishing email. It just manifests itself in maybe a phishing email and a text within the same, within 5 minutes that says, looks like it's the same information, right? Your bank is saying something. Well, I just got an email and I got a text. It must be my bank.
It must be, yes. And hopefully we, part of that too, maybe a little bit, we've been talking about preparing the proactive aspects of responding to incidents. There's a little bit of the postmortems too. Hopefully we have moved beyond just blaming the user because it is this type of sophistication can fool anyone, especially if they're under pressure. And if we don't have multi-factor authentication, we don't have other tools, I think those are more of the failures that failed the people rather than the people themselves be blamed.
Well, I'm a pre-mortem guy. I want to I want to work, but figure out before the patient's died, right? Post-mortem, it's too late. Something bad's happened. Let's do pre-mortem. So let's make sure that we're using multi-factor authentication.
Yes.
Let's make sure that people have a foundational level of awareness and understanding. That's where I am. Firmly. Pre-mortem.
Yes.
No more post-mortem. It's too late.
I love a zombie movie myself, but I agree with you. Let's do the pre-mortems. Just prevent as much as we can with those breaches.
That's right. Exactly.
Well, Jon, this is a wonderful conversation. You clearly came with a plan and well prepared to talk about incident response. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Really appreciate your time.
Appreciate it again, Jon. If you want to learn more about Raytheon, visit securityweekly.com/Raytheon RSAC. And stick around. We've got a lot more coming up on the live stream today. Welcome to RSA Conference 2023. We're recording live from Broadcast Alley here in Moscone West. I'm your host, Mike Shima, and I'm here with Amitai Ratzon, CEO of Pentera. Welcome, Amitai.
Thanks for having me.
Happy to have you here because we want to talk about automation. I love automation in many ways, and this is about automating security or validating security. That's kind of a unique angle, I think. Tell us a little bit, what are we validating? Why do we need this?
Thank you, and great question. So, in fact, automated security validation is a new concept that was kind of really invented by Pentera 2 years ago, kind of taking us kind of a few steps away, in a good way, from good old pen testing and vulnerability management. And if you try to think what is it we're trying to achieve, look at the typical enterprise, mid-market, large enterprise out there, a retailer, a manufacturing company, a finance company. These guys typically buy tons of stack. They buy tons of nuanced solutions, like AV and EDR and firewall and everything around cloud security and application security. So what does it really mean? They actually buy lots of point solutions, some of the mega solutions, and kind of to protect the castle. But most of these solutions are kind of preventative in nature, and they're there silent till something happens. Now, when Pentera, we go to them, we talk to CISOs and we ask them, so are you comfortable with everything you bought? I mean, do you know that now you're good?
Is it working?
Is it working? Yeah. And so the answers we get is, we're buying best of breed. We're doing our research. We have great programs. We try to hire the best people. We go to conferences. We try to stay informed. But do we know versus do we just assume we're good? I mean, we don't get good answers there. So Pentera is really here to kind of keep the CISO and the team humble in the moment of truth. We kind of come in, it's an agentless kind of solution without deploying agents that's gone lots of noise and like interfering with IT and with users' operations. We come in and we basically validate that everything you bought and built would survive the moment of truth. And that is, using emulated cyber attacks. Pentera is research-driven. We're 250 people, and the platform and the features and modules are all, outputs of lots of research that was done over the years. So the platform already has lots of attack techniques and lots of very, I would say, unique and special kind of EDR evasive techniques and others to really show the company that we're challenging how good they are, how good they're performing against the latest attacks. And then we kind of, we see interesting kind of situations because people that think that they really suck, they're actually good. People that just don't know get their score and they say, oh my God, I'm C-. How come? But Deloitte were here 2 weeks ago and they told me I'm A+. So how did you get there exactly? And then we start the conversation. And it's the only platform that actually shows our customers how the attacker think. We actually, they said that the attacker thinks in vectors while defender thinks in lists. Right? So we actually showed the vector that goes in the company, how one thing leads to the next. And it's the first time that customers, that are security practitioners, see that in real time. Because before Pentera, that whole pen test magic was done by third parties. They didn't share the process of how they get to stuff, but rather the end report. Now, we open people's eyes and they say, wow, now in real time, like a video game, we actually see the attacker's path inside. And wow, it's an eye-opening. It's the first time we see that.
It is, and my background is many ages ago, I was doing pen testing, manual pen testing, but I sort of got burnt out on that. It gets boring after a while. And I love how you said moment of truth, because this is what the attackers are doing. Tell us a bit more about what it means to experience that moment of truth or be able to see what, that explanation of that attacker's behavior.
Yeah, great question. So I think it all starts with Pentera when, our reps are trying to convince the skeptical prospect to give us a chance. Because who wouldn't want that magic button that you click that then tells you how well you're doing against Maze,
a happy face or a sad face.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, who doesn't want that button? So we work very hard to convince our prospective customers to go into the POV room. And we've invented this excellent 6-hour POV methodology So we don't we don't kill you when you prove the concept. It doesn't take like 3 to 6 months. You don't need to compose a project team. Our engineers, they come in at 9, they connect, and by 2 p.m. they're out, and that's it. So that experience has to be, as provocative as possible in a good way, so that people don't have more questions. And when you say what that moment of truth look like, that could be the moment when Pentera is able, after 2 minutes of enumeration and dynamic exploitation, to create a domain user in the network. And the customers say, but how did you do that? I mean, I had everything in place. Or someone that thought that they've scanned for all the log4shell, and then not only that we identify the log4shell, we also exploit it and progress the attack thanks to that identification exploitation. I mean, that overwhelms people because it's happening in their face, in front of them, in a very visual way, as opposed to a pen testing act that happens in some corridor in floor number 11 out of 25, and the results of which you see 2 weeks after. So it's very real, it's here and now, and we're showing you, hey, do you see that? This means that we just took over this and this and that, and people participate in that moment of truth, and they actually see what we do. They ask questions, we pause, we play, we make it very visual for them.
And I like that because you're describing a long sequence. There's a lot of things that come here, and it gets away from that myth of attackers just have to be right once. It's more of attackers have to have an exploit, but then they have to avoid this detection, they have to avoid this other detection, they have to avoid they have to pivot, but avoid the logging that's going to identify that pivot. And it sounds like what you're showing is this is the sequence that shows actually this tool failed here, or this tool failed here, or you weren't tuned in this manner, and this is the way we can identify real attackers more and more effectively.
Absolutely. I would say one more thing that people are quite surprised by. The pen testing industry have gotten our customers used to what a pen test output looks like. And that is usually the pen testing team comes over, they do what they do, and then the report ends with some major achievements. It usually end with, we have domain admin in clear text password and game over, now we go to the next project. But hey, hold on. Getting domain admin in clear text password is good, but what can you do with that? So exploiting print nightmare on some endpoint is interesting, but maybe it's not that interesting if it doesn't lead to something which is, putting our hands on some, important data points or the Swift server or something. It could be that the vulnerability that we've exploited that was categorized by Tenable, Rapid7, and Qualys as critical, after you exploit it, you say it's not really critical because it leads nowhere.
Here's context.
It leads nowhere. So when we look at Pentera, one of the things we do, we kind of open the eyes of our customers that instead of them looking at 3,000 vulnerabilities that came from one of the typical VM players, and then those are categorized into critical, high, medium, low, the Pentera users, they actually see 11 or 13 vulnerabilities and network misconfigurations, not just CVEs. And those usually represent the root causes for the tunnels that go below ground. And if you just close those root causes, then you don't have to attend to vulnerability number 5, 6, 7, 8, because number one, if LLMNR is disabled, then you can't sniff credentials over SMB.
Right.
So why attend to things that are happening as a result of 2 and 3, 5, 6 if you just shut down the root cause?
And it's such a better conversation to have with your developers, with your administrators, to say, here, please take care of these dozen issues rather than here's your list of 2,000, we're having SLA, we'll be back in a month to figure out how many you fixed.
Absolutely, and even the biggest customers that we speak to, the biggest banks, the biggest retailers and asset managers, they don't have the capacity, they don't have the manpower to deal with 2,000-3,000 vulnerabilities.
Nobody should.
And you know what? No one should today.
Absolutely.
The world has changed. This is the era of being more concise, and it's the era of context. So I hope we're adding some of those layers.
Well, now you mentioned like big banks, for example, but big banks, Google's, they have their internal pen test team, their internal red teams. And so do you see, what kind of prevalence do you see of organizations that have that internal work?
Absolutely. So as you might imagine, a company like Pentera, we got our unicorn status December 2021.
Nice.
We're 800 customers across 43 countries. We're big. We work with the biggest banks in the world, but also with 100 employee law firms. So we're applicable to these guys and these guys, right? But you're absolutely right that as you go up market, the biggest companies would usually have some form of a red team internally. And those guys actually, when they see Pentera, they don't know. At the beginning, they're skeptical. They kind of say, "Oh my God! I mean, is this going to replace me? Are you sure that you know everything? Because I've been doing this for 20 years, and you're just like technology, right?" At the beginning, we get this skepticism, but with time, we become the red teamers' best friends because this saves tons of time from them, so they can focus on the exotic stuff. So if you're a really good red teamer, trust me. And you've been this guy in the past, I don't need to teach you anything. You don't want to deal with the exhaustive stuff or like Nmap scanning and like just mapping and like creating the vulnerability maps and categorizing. You just want to go and like apply your like intuition and your creativity to the lucrative like stuff. And Pentera could look after the 90%, while those very expensive and talented red teamers could look at the 10% that probably only humans could take care of.
Yeah, and you hit it exactly right. It's the creativity that is still important for the humans, but it's that continuous, I imagine. It's just that always ongoing scanning that's going to be helpful, as well as a 100-person law firm probably isn't going to have a fully staffed 3 or 5-person red team.
Absolutely. So I think when we talk about continuation and continuous, we talk about, when we look at big enterprises, you can imagine that if let's say you're a very big bank, let's say you're, without names, like a huge bank out of the United States with daughter companies and subsidiaries in 30 countries. Even if you do have red teams and you do deploy pen testers to do whatever they need to do, there's a certain element of standardization that's missing. Because how do you compare apples to apples? Let's say that you're a US bank that's out of Silicon Valley or out of New York City or Boston or Dallas, and you have your French branch and your Portugal branch and your Brazil branch, and then those guys do their security validation using local pen test companies, and they all tell you, hey, I score A+. But the teachers that gave them the A+ are different teachers. So it's not apples. So you don't know as corporate whether all of your branches, daughter companies, when they say A+, this is the A+ that you refer to. So Pentera helps there a lot. So imagine you're the global CISO, and Pentera runs simultaneously at 25 countries, and by 2 p.m. that CISO sees like the scorecard of all the companies.
Consistency of a baseline.
Yeah, and Pentera couldn't care less whether there is no politics here. We're not a professional services company, so we don't care to show one company that they're C- and these guys are A+. We just see what we see, and we say what we see. And I think that global companies that really care about standardizing the red teaming and kind of enjoying from the continuous nature, but across the world, they really enjoy from what we do.
No, that's amazing. I think, and you already described how relatively easy it is just to do that proof of concept, onboard it. As we wrap up here, is there another way that you would just highlight or point to this new category that you're describing?
Absolutely. So some people kind of try to understand whether when we say automated security validation, we really mean that it's different than just pen testing, or it's just like a nicer words to the same thing. So when you talk about automated security validation, there are some more components that we include. For example, Active Directory password assessments as a matter of like a weekly thing you do. That's not pen testing, but that is part of security validation hygiene that one needs to undertake. Ransomware emulation, so beyond providing the dynamic pen testing across the network, inside out, outside in, we also allow a company to launch ransomware attacks against themselves that actually carry the characteristics of the main ransomware variants, that being Maze, REvil, Conti, Lockbit, including the encryption of files and pinging IOCs outside the network. That is not pen testing. That is another layer that people are obsessed with. People really want to get a report showing them how well I'm doing against REvil or Maze, as opposed to how well I'm doing against a generic black box attack. And the last component we've just added is credentials exposure. The industry got used to threat intel being served in a certain way that we are challenging. So if up until Pentera went out with this credentials exposure module, the way a company would have consumed threat intel data is by getting lots of lists of credentials that leaked, and now I need to do something about it. Pentera takes leaked credentials from the outside, and we actually automatically integrate the credential that leaked into the attack that we're propagating inside without getting instruction from anyone. So it's kind of a natural evolution of the attack. So Pentera talks with the outside world, darknet, deep web, and everything we know from the inside to propagate the attack and advance the attack. So that is automated security validation in the holistic sense of things.
And it's amazing. It's a great summary because it's showing this is behavior. How does an org respond to these attackers' behavior, not this particular CVE? That's a wonderful summary. Thank you, Amitai. I appreciate you joining us.
Thank you for having me.
If everyone wants to find out more about Pentera, visit securityweekly.com/Pentera RSAC. Thank you, and stay tuned for more coming up in our live stream. Welcome to RSA Conference 2023. We're recording live from it is Moscone West, but it's also Broadcast Alley. I am your host, Mike Shima, not stumbling over quite all my words, but I also have here Thomas Kinsella, who's the founder and chief customer officer at Tynes. Welcome, Thomas.
Thank you for having me.
So, no code, this is our topic. Is it no code all humans? I think we need to define some terms here first.
Yeah, so like no code automation is a way for people, analysts, engineers to automate repetitive manual tasks, but it is humans doing the automation. So it's the people that are familiar with the process that maybe don't know how to code, so maybe don't know how to write Python, or maybe don't know how to run a PowerShell script or something like that, that we allowed them to build processes really, really easily in a nice simple drag and drop builder, nice canvas. But we also have the power of code as well. So we've got a lot of power user features that enable them to, I suppose, be as effective as like a senior engineer, but without having to, I suppose, go through the worry of coding and writing mumbo jumbo.
Mumbo jumbo is the technical term. That's correct. Yes.
Certainly in my my security career, a lot of the security engineers who like wrote code, they were very good at what they did, but their code was not as good quality as they thought it was. So.
That's always the unfortunate surprise. But I think to your point, there's an appeal here, especially for SOC analysts, to be able to rely. They don't have to become coders, so they don't have to now, on top of their grueling day-to-day work, burn themselves more by learning code. This is what you're trying to solve.
Exactly. So yeah, the reason we started the company was because we were working in security operations for a long time, and it was really hard. We just had like way too many alerts. It was hard to hire good staff. There was that sense of inevitability that some incident was going to happen, and we knew we needed to move fast. And like automation isn't a new thing in security. Automation has been talked about for a long time. But when we looked at a lot of automation platforms and we found what other people were doing, we just thought it wasn't working and it was way too hard. So we found that like the people that were really good at like coding, they didn't want to be doing something like building an integration or writing some Python code to create an issue in Jira or contact a user on Slack. That wasn't there. They wanted to be building a threat intel platform or reverse engineering some malware. However, the people that were feeling the pain, the SOC analysts, they wanted somebody to build an integration in with Jira. They wanted somebody to upload a file to VirusTotal, and they wanted the power that those guys have, but they didn't want to rely on them. So when we looked at those like other platforms, we didn't like them, and we said, hey, maybe there's a way to empower the people that are feeling the pain to automate that pain and make themselves a little bit more effective and make their companies a lot safer through enabling them to focus on more impactful efforts.
Indeed. And as you point out, just Jira, we need Jira tickets for tracking. Slack is just a great communication, but if you're taking away the drudgery of just having to repeat all of these little tedious manual steps every single time, that seems like such a nice change.
Exactly, and like it's funny. You'll notice our colors. We're trying to be a little bit more of a fun security vendor and a friendly security vendor because the people that use the product, they genuinely love it. We've got the highest Net Promoter Score for any vendor at RSA on G2 because the people that are using the platform are so happy with it. Because they're getting rid of their pain, but they're able to not worry about having to create a ticket, and also they're enabling their colleagues. They're showing off for their colleagues, like, hey, look, check out this amazing thing that I built. It's really powerful. It's a fun process. So.
And what a great feedback too, to be able to say like people are that kind of score comes from you're actually delivering value. You're actually solving something I had rather than just no code, ChatGPT, AI. Here's the buzzword that does something.
Yeah, exactly. So we've got like a lot of really happy customers from small startups all the way up to Fortune 10s and some incredibly sophisticated security companies and security teams. But we like the feedback that we get and the people that are using it, they genuinely love it. It's really it's a privilege to be in the position where people actually like using your product and
indeed.
get a lot of value out of it. So
now I do want to come back to some more of the SOC side.
Yeah.
But I come from kind of a more application or product security background, and I hear no code, and I start to get worried. Does this mean no SDLC, no security? Is my attack surface expanding because of this?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's I think that's definitely the perception of no code, and kind of a little bit of the hesitation that a lot of people have towards it. They hear it, they're like, oh, maybe I can't do the things that I might want to do. Fortunately, you have to be able to do all those things, right? You have to have an SDLC, you have to be able to to have smart error handling, you have to be able to have retries, but we just build that in an intuitive way into the platform. So if you're worried about getting rate limited on whatever virus total or something like that, you can just have it in easy retry. If you're worried that your whatever tool is going to go down, I'll just put in an email address or put in a webhook and we'll send you an alert to go somewhere else. And if you want to, and you should have a decent life cycle of developing these workflows, you can use a test version and a live version and push your version from test to live. You can have an audit trail for all of these things. The whole thing is that in order to do that though, you don't need to know about Git. Now, we can integrate with Git obviously, but you don't need to know about complex areas. You're just able to, I suppose, abstract away those so that the person that wants to have that power can use them, but anybody that doesn't need it, they can just build and they can, But the more sophisticated customers, they will absolutely be using all of those features, and they should be. So. And
they should be. And I mean, I'll admit up front that even doing simple tasks, I've messed up more than one Git branch just with the wrong commits.
You and every other developer on the planet.
So. Yeah, and I think too, it's not so much that we need the code, we need the Git experts. We just more of these processes, an access log or an audit log, right? Access controls.
Yeah, absolutely. So and again, we have that functionality. So you have audit logs to see who did what when, and you can roll back to a particular version. But you also have the ability to have view only roles, have admin roles, have developer roles. But I suppose the cool part about using a platform like Tines is that you can build a workflow or build a process, and you can share it with other people as well. So you can develop something and it automates a process. But if you take the correct approach, you're kind of building modules, and you can build something and share it with somebody else so they don't have to build it. So you might have a process to analyze an IP address in 5 or 6 different security tools, or maybe you have a process to look up the asset owner and get their location, get their details, etc. And you're probably checking 3 or 4 different tools to do that. You can now make that a service for anybody else, so that in their Tines workflows or even outside their Tines workflows, they can call that and consume it. So it's a real, it's a real power that we're enabling people with.
And it's very much a coding pattern. Don't repeat yourself, right? We've just turned it into no code.
100%, yeah. So it is a coding pattern. Really, we're it's not that we're teaching people to code, just in a more effective way, and even a safer way as well. So
yeah, indeed. And let's talk a little bit more about that value. Why the SOC analysts were so happy. You did a study of this to inform this, right?
Yeah, we did. So we did a great study of about 500 security analysts, and it's the voice of the SOC. You can look it up, but it's I worked in the SOC, and the reason we did it was that we wanted to know, hey, life was really hard when I was working in a SOC. We're is it still as hard? And there were some really interesting findings. The thing that I think a lot of people think is SOC analysts hate their jobs. It's way too tough. And what we found was that actually they felt engaged, they felt that they were doing a good job, and they felt respected both by their peers and also by other teams in the company, and they knew the work that they were doing was important. And that's great. Security teams feel respected, but at the same time, it was they overwhelmingly felt burnt out. They overwhelmingly felt that they were doing more alerts, and about 75% said they were completely understaffed. So some of the questions that kind of came out of that was the vast majority, about 2/3 said they planned on leaving their job within the next 12 months. That's not to say that they will leave their job, but that they are burnt.
It's that stress.
It's that stress. So it was really interesting for us, because obviously the whole point of the reason we started Tines, the whole point of the platform is that we're trying to get rid of those mundane manual tasks. What was funny as well was when we asked them, hey, what are you what would you spend your time on? We thought it would be pen testing or reverse engineering malware or doing some really fun stuff. They were very mature about it. They were like, actually, like updating operational documentation was the number one.
Documentation.
And we were like, what? Like that's crazy. But they genuinely wanted to build better processes and spend more time actually making the company safer. And that was it wasn't so much. Yeah, it wasn't so much. Hey, we just want to spend more time on fun stuff. It was actually we want to make the company safer. But yeah, it was a really interesting study, and the other part about it, obviously, was that we asked about automation. And I think, there was a little bit of hesitation from the SOC. They felt a little bit threatened by the idea that, like, hey, automation will take away some of their jobs. But yeah, the whole reason that we were asking was like, actually, there's very few organizations that if you start automating processes, they're gonna be like, okay, we don't need that headcount. It's like, actually, we can now, like, people are crying out for security analysts. People are crying out for good security teams to be able to do better work. So it's like, these people are going to be able to spend more time on better efforts for their company.
Yes, and nobody wants to spend the time on the boring, mundane, repetitive parts of that process. Let's give that to the computers and let them deal with it.
Exactly, that's exactly it.
Yeah. So, and it's wonderful that you clearly are bringing experience from the SOC into this, and actually going out and getting feedback from users. Are there particular features that surprised you, or are there particular features that you didn't anticipate that would be so useful to them?
Yeah, completely. So, one of the things that we've done, we've gathered, we've built our own library of workflows, right? So we've got, we built a couple of hundred that our customers were using, that we saw were kind of coming up time and time again. But then our customers started sharing their own workflows. So they said, like, hey, I built this one. Can I share this with other people? And seeing what they've built with those, they've built with the platform, and they want to share. It's like, that's really inspiring. But the sort of stuff that we've seen them start sharing are a little bit more cutting edge processes, and kind of like the ones that they're a little bit geeking out about. So there have been some around ChatGPT, which is exciting. But there's also kind of really interesting ones where they're like, we think people should be moving into the IT automation space. So I've actually built this workflow to offboard users and a bunch of different tools really easily, and I want to share it with people because I think that's where it's going. And then we're like, oh, this is interesting. We should maybe start talking to some IT teams, and that's been very effective. Some of the workflows that they're building have surprised us, but it's kind of excited us as well. It shows the power of Tines and the power of where we no code automation, where it can go, that it can make the lives of security teams, but also IT teams, DevOps teams, engineering teams easier as well. So
no, indeed, delivering value across those. As you look on, if you're going to look towards doing the study next year, is there certain things that you would hope to see improve, or hope to feel that SOC analysts are enjoying better?
Yeah, so one of the things that we didn't really do a test last year was whether or not it was different in really large organizations and really small organizations, or whether or not cert teams, or I suppose the different types of organizations, whether it was different. Definitely want to engage in that. I think the other thing is looking at the maturity of a lot of tools out there. They are trying to get a little bit better at that noise. I think a lot of companies have tried to, and there's some great companies here, that a lot of companies have tried to tune that. So I'm really hoping that there is not the best benefit for us, but I'm really hoping that that automation will have helped, but also that a lot of security companies will have done a little bit of a better job of trying to get rid of the pain that the security analysts are feeling. It's still hard, but I'm hoping that they'll have done a better job at that.
Indeed. Well, hopefully we'll be able to talk to you next year, and we'll see how that goes.
I really hope so. Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you, Thomas. This was very much it's not so much no code, but no stress type of delivery.
Exactly,
that's a wonderful message to set. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
My pleasure too. If you'd like to learn more about Tines, visit securityweekly.com/TinesRSAC. Thank you, and stick around for more of the live stream. We got a couple more for today.
When organizations face poor web performance, challenges building modern applications at scale, or need to reduce operational and development costs, they turn to Fastly. Fastly's distributed edge network means your business can unleash its growth potential without worrying about scaling your infrastructure, whether for growth of users, transaction volume, or geographic expansion. Get the speed, security, and edge cloud innovation you need to deliver profitable and engaging experiences. Visit securityweekly.com/Fastly for more information or to speak to an expert. The cybersecurity landscape is full of single solution providers, making it easy for unexpected cyber threats to sneak through the cracks. That's why Fortra is creating a stronger, simpler strategy for protection, one that increases your security maturity while decreasing the operational burden that comes with it. This is all possible thanks to Fortra's best-in-class portfolio and deep bench of expert problem solvers. Fortra's integrated, scalable solutions help customers face their toughest challenges with confidence. Learn more at securityweekly.com/Fortra. Fortra.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to day 3, 4. At this point in RSA, you start to forget what day it is, what time it is, where you are. But I made it here, and I am delighted to be joined by Deepika Chauhan, Chief Product Officer at DigiCert. Welcome.
Nice to be here.
So let's just start. Tell me about DigiCert and what the value proposition is.
Yes. So DigiCert is the leading provider of digital trust. Mm-hmm. And what exactly digital trust means can differ across organizations. But essentially, digital trust is the foundation of the connected world. So if you think about it, so many people are online. We're using so many different kind of devices. Many workloads are moving to cloud. And all of this is a connected world. How do we make sure that we have confidence in all those transactions? And that is digital trust. Mm-hmm. And the reason it matters to the organizations is because, number one, they want to make sure that there's the risk of outage or risk of business disruption is not there. With increasingly complex IT infrastructure, they want to limit any outage that they have because there's a huge economic loss. Mm-hmm. The number two is, again, with increasing complexity, you're seeing more and more attack surfaces, whether they're via software or devices. And so they want to limit the breach and they want to protect against that. And finally, number three is not about risk or not about compliance, but innovation. With the increasing digitization, more and more companies are looking at new different ways in which they can innovate, whether it's securing elections or providing patient care and medical infrastructure. And essentially, these are the three core elements that digital trust provides. And with DigiCert being the leading provider of digital trust, that's the core mission.
Now, talk about how the organization builds digital trust. So, if I'm a prospective customer and I'm coming to you, what's the elevator pitch? Well, you can give me more than an elevator pitch, but
yeah. Let's take digital trust as building blocks. Mm-hmm. First and foremost, if you just think about trust, it's about different entities who may not even know each other. So it's hugely driven by compliance and regulation. So the first and foremost building block is that we need to make sure there's compliance, adherence to the compliance happening across the organizations. And there are a lot of different entities which are ensuring that there's standards for the compliance. The CA Browser Forum, European Union has different rules. Japan may have different rules. There are different SOC rules. And across the organization, first as a customer is making sure there's a compliance with the standards and providing the industry standard PKI certificates to protect your users, your servers, your devices. Mm-hmm. Number two layer of the building block, I would say, is operational. And this is where it's really important when you're talking about key transactions being secure, the availability and the infrastructure support is very critical. If you think about the RAS, the reliability, availability, and scalability aspect of it. So that's the second layer, that it's very important across the globe that we have that basic infrastructure availability, and combined with that is the validation. Because it's not as if I trust you once, sometimes things can change. And just like your driver's license has to be renewed at a periodic basis, your trust elements have to be renewed as well. So there's a validation linked to that. That are we validating that this website belongs to an organization which can be trusted? I mean, let's just look at the trade compliance. Rules change all the time. Mm-hmm. The third layer which comes into play is more about how do you manage the trust? The layer number 1 and 2 are all about establishing the trust. I trust you. I trust this device. I trust that server. But with increasing complexity, the third layer is there's so much complexity of servers, users, and devices. And it's not just that. It's the different software. It's the different documents. It's the different devices like the cameras. And organizations don't even know what certificates are available across all of them. And that's why they face outage. Even some of the biggest organizations, even Elon Musk recently on Twitter, he posted about a Starlink outage linked to a certificate expirations. So with increasing complexity, the need becomes that you need to be able to manage trust. You need to know what's out there, and then you need to know when certificates are expiring, and then you need to make sure there's automation happening. So the managing trust becomes really important. And finally, I would say the fourth layer is about extending trust. Because when organizations are managing trust, it's not that we are living in an isolated world. It's not just that we are protecting our employees and our users and servers. Mm-hmm. It's also about when I'm using a certain software within an organization, it may be using a lot of open source components. The number of devices that I'm using may be coming from different places, and there may be different content provenance for some of the documents and the images. And how do we make sure we are tying it to the extended world? And this is where extending the trust into the new ecosystems. Can we look at the software binary and say who signed it? Is it even signed? Or are we running malware on our systems? So I think those are what I would say is the 4 key building blocks. Compliance and operation number 1. The second one being establishing trust, the operations and the validation around it. The third one being managing trust. And finally, the fourth one, extending it into the ecosystem.
Very good. So there is a partnership with Oracle to talk about. So do tell. Yeah. So we're very excited about Oracle and DigiCert partnering together. Oracle has the best-in-class enterprise software as well as the cloud infrastructure, which is built from a security-first mindset. And DigiCert is the leading provider of digital trust. What we're excited about is the options it provides our customers. More and more, especially in the world of digital security, what the customers want is data sovereignty, that the data lives where they are, whether it's within the country or within the region, for example, say European Union, and they're uncomfortable about data being there, say running out of European data centers for some of the very critical needs. I'll give you an example. One of the customer use cases we are solving is election security. So in one of the Asian countries, they're partnering with us in making sure that the ballots are secure, the person who's counting the ballots is authenticated, all happening digitally. But for something so critical, they want to make sure that all the data is residing in that country. So the jurisdiction sensitivity is very critical. And our message to customers is, you know what you want in terms of where your data needs to reside, and we are not going to force you to reside that data somewhere else. So we will meet you. You want the data within your country or within the region
or within on-prem. And that's where the partnership with OCI is very exciting, because they have wide availability in 42 different regions, and we can actually deliver on that promise together to our customers.
Very good. Now, every RSA conference has its focus of hype. So for 3 years or so, it was Zero Trust.
Yeah.
Then we get to this year, and everybody's talking about the role of artificial intelligence. Any thoughts on the role artificial intelligence has to play in what DigiCert does, and that can be everything from how you use it to boost the product, or how you use it to protect clients?
That's a great question. And with every hype, there's always an element of customer needs associated with. With artificial intelligence, as exciting as it is, I think it only increases the need for digital trust. Because when you're seeing an image or even a video, how do you actually know that the person who's talking actually said those things? Somebody is watching our video. How do we know that it is me who's saying those things, or it is you who's asking those questions? That goes across all the different content. And there's a content authenticity aspect of it, and content provenance, that how do you have non-repudiation? How do you attach trust to not just who said it once, but as that content gets changed, gets edited, that you're attaching the trust element across the journey, across the provenance, across the supply chain. So I think that's true for artificial intelligence as well, whether it's deep fake or whatever content is being generated to answer any question. How do you make sure that can be trusted? And this is where there are opportunities, as well as if we want to make sure that artificial intelligence really takes off, we need to instill the confidence in people that they can actually believe in it.
Yeah. Any parting thoughts?
Well, I think first, it's super exciting to have the RSA back to what it was. I think this is the first RSA after COVID where everybody is getting together and talking about new innovations. But I think this RSA conference is also very pivotal, because the world changed so incredibly during the COVID years. The increasing digitization which happened has only accelerated some of the trends related to security. And this is why it's very exciting, the digital trust, as well as other messages from the conference are extremely relevant across the board. So I would say, I think what we are seeing in all the organization is digital trust being a strategic imperative, and organizations thinking broadly across the board that with changing trends, with more workloads being on the cloud, with zero trust infrastructure, people working remotely, more coming into the identity parameters, so to speak, in terms of the devices, that people are thinking about strategically, how do we actually protect? And you're seeing some of that. You actually have people appointing digital trust officers in the organization, thinking holistically, because we are in a connected world, and the parameter is only increasing, and identity is a new parameter.
Well, it's been wonderful having you here, and have a great rest of RSA. And same to all of you tuning in.
Thank you, Bill.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to our program on this first full day of RSA 2023. And I'm delighted to be here with an old friend, a very, very old friend.
Delighted, he says.
Steve Ragan, Manager of Global Product and Portfolio Marketing for Cisco.
One of the many, yes.
Back in the day, we were just a couple of scruffy
ragtag
cybersecurity writers, and now here you are.
Look at us, we've grown
this
up.
Big title.
Yeah, we've grown up. We have titles that take many syllables to state.
So we're going to talk now for the next few minutes just about the vibe as we see it so far, the things that we hear people talking about. And I'm going to start with the biggest piece of hype of them all. What do you think it's going to be?
AI.
Ah.
Look at that. Look at that.
You make my job so easy.
It's going to be AI. It's always AI.
So people are talking about it on a few different levels. There's the risks involved with everybody using generative AI. So ChatGPT. Code writing, yeah. And then there's the other conversation, which is here's where AI is a benefit to security. And here's how our products achieve that. So talk about what you're hearing so far and what you think people should be talking about if you think they might be missing the boat so far.
So one of the things I'm hearing about, and I've heard this a couple of times today, actually, and it's people that are taking AI to the degree that, on one hand, the left extreme is AI is going to replace people, so it's going to lead to jobs loss, and that's just absolutely not the case. And the other side is that AI is going to automate everything in the industry, and that is absolutely not the case. AI is going to work best when you have humans to go along with it. And what I mean by that is, as it stands now, the best AI can do is take a quantitative view of your network and the telemetry that's on it and give you an outcome report. Like, here's what happened. Here's why I know that happened. Here's what I suggest you would do about it. A human still has to take that and analyze it. And the reason a human needs to be involved is because a human knows the business. A machine will never understand your business. It'll never understand the goal. It'll never understand the pressures of regulatory compliance. It may know the laws, but it doesn't know the nuance behind the laws. And that is important. So when you think of how AI is going to transform the security industry or how AI is going to do something performative, really what AI is going to do is simplify things. It's going to take a lot of the steps out of, for example, writing after-action reports or compliance reports and things like this. AI can help there. But AI is not going to be the silver bullet that solves the problems in security. AI is not going to fix compliance. AI is not going to fix regulatory things. So, yeah, there's a lot that you hear about on the floor, and it's going to be all this week. They're going to talk about AI. But the advice I would give to people is don't look for AI to solve all of your problems. Look for AI to be an assistant.
And don't look to AI as this thing that might take your job.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
Maybe
Never
someday, but, not today.
And you know what? The funny thing is, if AI does get to the point where it starts taking low-level jobs in the industry, all that means is you're going to need to have new people go and be prepared to fix and tune the AI. Like, it's going to create jobs. It's not going to eliminate them. Yeah. That's the thing.
Yep, totally. So, Cisco. So many components.
So many components. It's really funny. If you'd have talked to me.
Tell me about what the priority topics are this week, though.
So for Cisco, the priority topics are AI. We are talking about AI and the use of AI in our products and everything like this. We're also talking about XDR. But XDR in the concept of having native telemetry from all across the spectrum of your network, from email, endpoint, DNS, the network itself, things like this, and leveraging that in a way to where you can simplify SOC operations and make it make sense. So the humans have an easier time dealing with incidents or what could be an incident. Because a lot of times there are flags or things that look bad at first glance across the network when you see them pop up on the radar, but a little bit of digging turns out it's not. It's not a false positive or false negative, but it's just not what you thought it was. So simplifying solutions by that, by giving granular visibility all the way across. That's really what we're looking at. Also, identity management is another thing we're going to be talking about heavily this week. And part of the reason for that is, identity is still not only one of the most important assets to developing a security program, it's also a linchpin that you still see criminals to this day hanging on to get in. Look at all the ransomware incidents you see across the board. That stuff starts with identity. So, we're reaching out across a number of spectrum things across this week. And, of course, people are welcome to come visit us. You'll see our booths on North and South Hall. You'll find us. We're there.
That's right. I forgot you guys are in both.
Yeah. And in between, there's the threat wall. which is also fun to watch. I got to see that get built the other day. That was neat. I'd never seen that before.
Now, within the context of what we've talked about so far, one of the things you and I have talked about before is the needs of the modern day SOC.
Yes.
And AI fits into that discussion. Identity is obviously a big component of this discussion. But what are you hoping to see and hear? And I'll tack on to the end of the question, what is Cisco going to be talking about when it comes to how to get SOCs, how to help companies bring their SOC to the level that it needs to be based on the size of their environment and scope?
So the thing you want to think of is, first of all, it's not about the size of your environment. The size of your environment should not count. You should be able to have the tools in place and the people and processes in place to deal with whatever may come your way. And that's where we want to focus. That's where Cisco's going to be looking at. It's simplifying SOC operations to where we're meeting the customer where they are, no matter where they are. You know, we've got an environment now to where hybrid work is literally the norm. It's not the exception anymore. And, you know, think about it. A decade ago, man, with the jobs that you and I had, we were lucky because we got to work remote and we got to work wherever we wanted to.
Yep.
But now everybody gets that because most workers are, for the most part, at least 2 to 3 days a week working remote.
Thank you, COVID.
Exactly. Well, yeah, if ever. But the thing is, you know, you asked, where are we seeing that? What kind of conversations are we want to get into? We want to talk about this. We want to talk about meeting you where you are and protecting you all across the board. You should not have to think about security when you start to work. It should just be there. It should be underlying. So when you think of, you know, SOC operators, it should be simple for them to judge the network and the performance of the network and the incidents that may roll in based on a glance. They shouldn't have to do 50 billion steps to realize that that was a phishing email. It should be flagged. That was a phishing email. We've seen hundreds of it like this. This is why we flagged it. This is what it looks like. That's what we're giving you. It's the information and the insight across the board, and that's what every company needs. They need more telemetry. They need more insight and viewpoints, and it shouldn't have to be 50 different vendors to achieve this. There's no reason why you can't be built on a platform. And that's something I've been looking for decades now. It's just the ability to simplify operations, because I remember being in a cubicle having to try to deal with incidents. It's annoying when I've got to go to 50 different panels to get an answer to a single question. Why should I have to? And unfortunately, we've built an industry around doing that.
Yeah.
We really have. Keep looking at your cup. The cup's there, Bill. It's not going anywhere.
Steve is doing that just to razz the people behind the camera who are worried about the coffee cup.
Yeah. The wonderful people, by the way, without whom none of this conversation would be even happening. Just saying.
That's right. Well, that was a good save. Well done. So
we're professionals, man.
We are. So let me ask you now, and we're down to the last 5 minutes, so this might be the last question I get to
crunch
ask.
time. I'm in trouble.
Talk a bit about where you'll be this week, who you'll, without naming names, who you'll be talking to. Stick to the personas.
So, stick to the personas? Okay, yeah, I can do that. So one of the biggest personas I'm going to be talking to this week, and I'll be bouncing around between the booth and, you know, various little meetings across the board, are SOC operators and SecOps. Straight across the board, SecOps. And a couple of DevOps people and some IT ops people, because they're old school friends and I've known them forever. Like, I want to get their opinions and their viewpoints and things like this. So I will be talking to a lot of SecOps things. And actually, Cisco itself will be doing a lot of DevOps and SecOps and IT ops and NetOps. Like, we're going to be talking to the wide spectrum. And fortunately, we're in a place right now to where, you know, SecOps is very much a thing at RSA, but so is DevOps, so is IT ops. Like, it's a little bit of everything here when you look in the environment. In fact, as we've been sitting here talking, I've been watching people move across the hall in front of us, and you could probably hear them in the background, the little static noise. And the thing is, like, when you look at these people walk through, they're from all walks of life, all points of view. They've got different enterprise operations, some scaled up, some scaled down. Some know what they want with their security programs. Some don't even know where to start. And these are the people we want to talk to because there's a lesson for all of them, and there's a way to work with all of them. And the ultimate goal for all of this is to make the industry better. It make the internet suck less, you know? That's where we want to be.
Yeah.
And I stole that line from Andy Ellis, and I'm going to keep using it.
That's a perfect way to end this. Steve, always a pleasure.
My boy.
This was a lot more professional than the podcast we did back in 2014 at DEF CON.
It very much was. None of us are going to get fired for this one, so that's a good thing.
Everybody, have a great rest of your day.